Hello again, friends. It's Joshua with another apology. When Caleb and I recorded this and the previous episode, I managed to mess up my audio. It's still very understandable and clear, but pretty hollow and a bit echoey. It just isn't up to our usual high audio standards for this podcast. I've definitely figured out the problem, and I won't let it happen again. Thanks for your patience, and enjoy the show.
You're listening in on an animated discussion about Superman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from the Cinematropolis.com. And today's topic is tools of the trade. I would say that this episode is very much a tool of the trade of long-form storytelling.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's a reasonably well-told tale that is really only interesting or important because it introduces stuff that's going to be a big deal down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like, honestly, kind of a throwaway episode, but they put the dark side stuff in there. And they put the apocalypse stuff in there, so you're like, okay, actually, this episode's super important. So they kind of slid some super important stuff into what was otherwise, I would say, a relatively disposable episode.
Yeah, 100% on all levels.
Yeah, I mean, but okay. Before we get, and I don't want to be, I'm not down on this episode. I'm just not in love with it. But let's get to the things we do like. Or at least want to talk about. I think first and foremost, the inclusion of Maggie Sawyer. This will be introduction of her character. Love it. Love her character. Love the role she plays in the episode, what she brings to the table. Joshua, what'd you think of her character design?
So I am a fan of Maggie Sawyer's from the comics. Also, I wasn't reading a lot of Superman when she first showed up in the late 80s. But I got to know her better as I was reading all the DC comics in the early and mid 2000s. And then she makes the leap from Metropolis PD to Gotham PD. And I got real interested because that book, Gotham Central, is amazing and I highly recommend it. So I come into this with extremely high standards. And I think that they absolutely nail it from the waist up. And here's what I mean.
Yeah, Joshua, please elaborate. I'm kind of concerned when you say from the waist up, but all right, go.
Okay, so from the waist up, she looks like a woman who has been very serious in her career, right? She has fought and clawed her way. She's now a captain or something similar in the Metropolis Police Department. She's in charge of the Special Crimes Unit. This is big deal stuff. And she looks the part. She looks very no nonsense and very serious from the waist up. From the waist down, my confusion is she wearing like an overcoat that is a mini dress length, or is it a leather mini dress? And neither answer is good.
Hey, Joshua, listen, she is clearly from the cyberpunk future. She's been to Batman Beyond and she stole some clothes while she was there and came back, because this definitely, her costume echoes strongly, specifically from the waist down, a police outfit from a cyberpunk piece of fiction, I would say. But it feels you might even be able to get away with that in the animated series or the new Batman Adventures, but in Superman, this is a weird choice.
It is a weird choice. It really is. And I feel like it undermines her seriousness to a certain extent. So let me say, everybody wear whatever you want. Whatever makes you feel cool, whatever makes you feel powerful, wear it. Godspeed to you. However, we must admit that this design was the culmination of a series of choices. And they are a series of choices made by a creative team that has not always done the best work when it comes to female or female presenting characters. They just haven't always done great at that. Sometimes they've done absolutely terribly. We've discussed this before. The Batman and Harley Quinn movie comes to mind. Most of the time I'm just like, man, though, does the skirt have to be that short on Lois Lane? I mean, it's a little questioning, but in this case, I am legitimately confused, and the only thing that I can think is putting this incredibly serious, no-nonsense woman in not just a mini skirt, but then an overcoat that is also mini skirt length is a questionable choice. I'm going to leave it at questionable and not cast any further aspersions on the creators of this show.
Sure. Well, I think one thing we should probably note too is this is a LGBTQ plus character.
Yes, and she was known to be so in the comics, and we will see nods at that in the show. So they knew what they were doing with Maggie Sawyer as far as her deeper character stuff. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you got some representation there, and I know there's a whole other conversation to be had about how much they demonstrate that on the show. But I just want to give a shout out there. I think that's kind of cool, and again, I think she just adds a certain flavor to the way that this case unfolds. Now, I know we've already got Dan Turpin. We've already talked to him at length about his design when we talked about World's Finest to kick off the Superman the Animated Series discussions. But yeah, I mean, this is actually the first appearance of Dan Turpin chronologically, if you were watching the episodes chronologically. Yeah. So, and we'll get into this more, but yeah, you're adding these two police figures. I don't know if I would say totally as your POV characters, but some of the I don't know, they're kind of the protagonists.
At least Dan is. Yeah. I think Dan is definitely like our main POV character. This is so much in Dan's POV that we really don't hear from Superman very much, which is its own issue. We'll wrap that up in our issues later, but yeah, it's and it's really interesting that, again, the one thing I'll remind everyone about Dan Turpin is that he is basically a cartoon version of Jack Kirby, the co-creator of most of the Marvel Universe back at the beginning, and then he went across the street and created a bunch of amazing characters for DC, many of which we're going to see on this show, and in fact, we're introducing a lot of them, or at least the idea of them, in this episode. We're doing Fourth World stuff, so let's homage Jack Kirby. But that's actually a good example. Let's put Turpin next to Maggie. Turpin is an older guy, middle-aged or older, in what Superman the Animated Series wants us to think of as a very serious suit, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, we would never question the dignity of Dan Turpin's dress as a police inspector, and I feel like we might question the dignity of Maggie's dress as his superior. And it's a question. It's just a thing to think about, friends.
Just think about it. But, Joshua, obviously nodding to some of the characters, like, again, Darkseid is named at the end of the episode. We aren't going to go really too far down the Darkseid conversation because he is going to have his own episodes for us to go really in-depth on the design and motivations and all that. But, this is the first time we see Darkseid. But I think someone we could talk a little bit about here, of course, is Kanto and his design, Joshua.
This is your first time to ever hear of this character, am I right?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's fine. Honestly, this is a conversation that I have a lot because I have some Fourth World tattoos on my arm. Like, they cannot be missed. And so it's a conversation that I have a lot where somebody's like, who is that? And then I tell them, and in the case of my tattoo, it's Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. And they say, should I know who that is? And I say, no, not really. But at the same time, it's not that deep a cut if you read DC Comics, right? Like it's a big cut if all you know is, DCEU or the cartoons, although they show up all the time here too. See, it's a difficult question. How much are we supposed to know these characters?
Here's what I will say, Joshua. Here's all I'm going to say is I could name off at least probably 4 characters from Apocalypse and the New World stuff, right? He's not, right. Kanto's not one of them. I'm like, Granny Goodness, right. Desaad, we got Steppenwolf, like there's 3 right there. It just is, it's one of those like, Kanto, okay. I mean, now here's what really gave it away. I kind of knew, I've seen this episode before, so I of course knew that we were building up the Darkseid. But if it wasn't for that not previous knowledge I brought into the episode, I don't think I would have realized this was a Darkseid connected character until I used the boom tube, which you don't actually see until the actual use the boom tube until the end of the episode. So I actually found Kanto's his all business. I loved the flat affectation of his voice. I hated the character design because I felt like it was borderline lazy. Until you get to Apocalypse, and then his design is awesome for the whole 30 seconds you get to see it.
And I actually think he looks terrible in a suit because he has that Renaissance hair. But the reason he has Renaissance hair is because he wears a more Italian Renaissance outfit when he's on Apocalypse. which if you know before you see him in the suit is fine. But if the first time you see him is in just, a business suit, you're like, what is going on with this dude's like hairstyle choices? So yeah, I largely agree. I think him in a suit is fine. Like it does its job, but it's a little weird and inexplicable with his hair, but I love his outfit on Apocalypse, and it's basically comics appropriate. It's almost 100% comics accurate.
Does he show up? Okay, Kanto specifically, remind me, does he show up as another one of the cronies again, or is this the only time we see him?
I want to say that he is don't hold me to this, because we do a bunch of Fourth World stuff, and Kanto is legitimately not a major player in it, usually. I don't think we see him again until he is kind of a background player in an episode of Justice League where he is like a lieutenant to either Granny or Vermin Wunderbar when they're going to war over Apocalypse. But that is like
way down
in the
line.
Future.
Yeah.
I don't think we see him again until then. I'm prepared to be proven wrong. But yeah, even in this kind of a deep cut part of the DC universe, he's not a major player.
Okay. Well, anyway, for everyone who needed something else for trivia night, Kanto. If you needed to name another crony of Darkseid's, well, now you got one.
He is Darkseid's chief assassin.
Oh, chief
so
assassin.
If you need to know his job, that's it.
Which is funny because he doesn't really play an assassin type role in this. He's more like an arms dealer in this episode. Okay, we'll get to that. All right.
No. I think no. That's worth saying. I think that they chose Kanto specifically for this role so that the Fourth World stuff would be more of a surprise, even to people who are a little more in the know. Because if Desaad had shown up, then everybody who just watched Super Friends back in the late 80s would have known that this was Fourth World stuff. I think that was purposeful obfuscation. And from that perspective, he's a good choice. And honestly, as a huge fan of Kirby in general and the Fourth World in particular, I like to see all the bit players get their time to shine. So yeah, I think they chose that with purpose, like to fool people a little bit. Not fool, to make the reveal more of a reveal. So I'm cool with it. I think that's the same reason that you hear the boom tube 2 or 3 times before you see the boom tube. It's the same thing, I think.
Okay, so you think it was kind of like as a mislead.
But a gentle one. Yeah.
But keep it a little more in wraps. Okay, I can appreciate that. I think, Joshua, last time we want to talk about, and I think we'll probably have many more conversations about this in the future, is the actual look of Apocalypse that we do get. Because the last shot of the last scene of the episode really is establishing shots of, here's Apocalypse. Wow, it looks awful. Wow, it looks hellish. Wow. What is this place? Because if you were not a Superman fan and did not know about the New World, this is your first time seeing Apocalypse, you might actually literally think it is hell.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. It is a literal hell world, even in terms of the Fourth World. There's a literal heaven world too, called New Genesis, which is more Garden of Eden than floating around on clouds, although their main city does float around. So it's a little bit of both, I guess. And then when you go to Apocalypse, I feel like they nailed it. I mean, it's all fire pits and this like brutalist architecture. And I mean, it just looks like a place it's all industry and not in a nice way. I think they nailed it. And I think every single time we see Apocalypse from here out, we will get a little bit of a different angle on it. And it will be great almost every time. I think they do a great job.
You'll feel like it looks even worse. I mean, the design is even better because the place looks even worse when you see it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So stellar design choices there on Apocalypse. So good stuff. All right, Joshua. So I'm not gonna lie. I don't really there's like 2 or 3 things in this episode that stick out to me as we're talking about, because otherwise I really truthfully do think this is a throwaway episode. Oh, look, they brought back Bruno Mannheim. He's a petty organized criminal. Like, I wouldn't even say he's like a top ranking organized criminal. He's like a petty, low level. He's got thugs. He has operations, but he's in no way a real threat to Superman in pretty much any way.
Okay. I think that's an interesting insight, because I think you're half right. The half right that you are is that he's no match for Superman. That's literally the point of what's going on with Bruno in this episode, is that he's got to next level this. It's not working out, right?
Right.
I had a tank. I was going to rob that gold exchange, and then Superman showed up, and my tank, which was ruling everything, is now worthless. I mean, I think what little arc we get for Bruno, that's it. I do feel like maybe they didn't do the best job demonstrating to you that he is basically the Rupert Thorne of Metropolis.
Is that really okay? Because I definitely. I mean, I know that they had set him up in fun and games. We had the introduction, and we did see that he is influenced the livelihood and the lives of people in Metropolis negatively. I mean, we've seen that. How he's ruined lives. So okay, I don't want to demean that. And maybe it's just because it's Superman versus Batman, but like when you see him show up here, you're like, okay, well, he's going to get dispatched like almost immediately. But you know what? That's a fair point. The context is everything. Because if Superman showed up and took out like the Italian mafia or something, you know what I mean? It would be nothing, right? They wouldn't stand a chance.
And Intergang really is the only game in town for organized crime as far as Metropolis is concerned. And Bruno sits at the top of it. And it really is Intergang's job in Metropolis to start borrowing apocalyptic technology in order to bring themselves up to the level that Superman is. So Intergang is both a demonstration of Superman's power and also a narrative reason to up the game across the board. So from that perspective, they're doing a great job.
Yep.
I do feel like they mook Bruno up a little too much. Right? Because you don't look at him and immediately decide he is the Rupert Thorne of Metropolis.
Now, he seems more like, I mean, at this point, I mean, again, I think now that you mention it, I think they did a little bit of that legwork in fun and games, but not, I wouldn't say, I never really felt like when you look at him, you're like, oh, this guy means business. What I see this guy, especially in this episode, is you're seeing a guy who is desperately trying to remain relevant, which, to your point, though, that's only because Superman's in the picture. So, so maybe just seeing how Superman is impacting organized crime, that's really cool. So I'm totally talking myself out of my hypothesis at the beginning of this statement, and now I'm saying, oh no, it's actually great because this explains why he would go to Darkseid, because he's like, I've got to up my game if I want to stay the top of the king in town, you know.
But I think you make a fine point as far as the way that they designed and characterize him, is that he does look too much like a mope compared to somebody like Rupert Thorne, who's obviously a criminal, but is just as obviously in charge. And I think that's kind of an interesting approach to this. Like, what story could we have done that would have demonstrated Bruno being competent and scary? Because we don't care about Metropolis until Superman gets there. And the minute Superman gets there, he's no longer as menacing and scary. So yeah, no. I think you hit upon a kind of difficult and unique space that they had to try and fill with Bruno Mannheim, and they probably didn't nail it. But to be fair, it's a pretty tall order. So
it's hard to match up to Superman, you know, especially in 20-minute episodes. So really, now that we're talking through it, I do think, and I don't know if they nailed it, but I think that was that's why they included him in Fun and Game was to show this guy is a monster. He's a criminal, but he's a monster.
He has hurt people very badly, both physically and emotionally, and So, but again, right there in the very first episode where they're introducing him, he's a kidnapping victim. He's a MacGuffin. Like, he is not the threat. Toyman is the threat, you know? Yeah. So it's not bad. I wouldn't say they made a bunch of bad choices, but you can definitely kind of see the push and pull of differing narrative priorities when it comes to Bruno Mannheim. So yeah, it's a good insight.
We talked so much more already, Joshua, about Bruno Mannheim than I had any expectations. So I think this is a good conversation. I think another thing both you and I noted here, and I'm getting through the small stuff before we get to the big stuff.
Yeah, because there's a big one.
There's a big one. But the menacing Superman look. So I saw so I'm talking about, I feel like there's like twice in this episode at least where they make very specific decisions to make Superman look very menacing, like in a way almost like he's in a horror movie where he's the monster doing the killing. There was one where you see kind of his initial silhouette, but the one that sticks out is the one you see at the very end of the episode where you see him in the silhouette, Batman style. You can see his outline, but all of a sudden his eyes open, the red, you know, you're like, oh boy, kind of reminiscent of what we've seen from Mr. Freeze in the past even, you know. I guess I'm wondering from you, Joshua, like, is this just a cool thing they're doing right now, or do you think that they are foreshadowing like maybe where they want to take Superman in the future?
That is a really interesting question that had not occurred to me, because that whole silhouette, but you can see his eyes because he's super angry thing from Superman has since this moment been done to death. Like, I'm tired of seeing it. I'm not just tired of seeing it. I think we see it so much that it kind of messes up our view of Superman, because Superman should not be threatening and angry all the time. And the fact that they do it all the time means when they do want him to be threatening and scary, this should be their go-to move, but they've used it so much that it's, the shine's kind of off the apple.
You lose the impact, yeah.
In terms of this specific show, though, what a great question, because we try and not be too spoilery. We try and stay in the moment. But friends, I can tell you, they are going to do some pretty shocking and difficult things with Superman in terms of the fourth world, where people are going to be scared of him, and we are going to be right to be scared of him.
Yep.
So it is really interesting that this show introduces that silhouetted, glowing eyes, terrifying thing at the same time that they're introducing the fourth world. I would like to believe that they're foreshadowing, so that's what I choose to believe.
I am also choosing to believe that. Okay, I'm glad you had that perspective, because it does, the coincidence. Again, and it wasn't just once. That's the one that sticks out in my mind. There was one other time I noted, and I wish I would have marked the specific scene, but there was another scene earlier in the episode where he's doing something, and they clearly, like, he's in the shadows, and he looks menacing. Yeah. Like, his build is meant to intimidate, and I'm like, well, we know where they're going. Like, with without being specific, with the dark side type storylines, we know that they're taking this in a certain direction. So, like, how much? I mean, it seems like they have, to a certain degree, have a pretty firm plan in place for where they're taking it. Which, again, kudos to them, because this is season 1, and we're gonna see Darkseid rolling out for years. So
he is huge in the second season of this show. Is a huge deal in Justice League. Is a huge deal, kinda, in a different way in Justice League Unlimited. Yeah, he never goes away. And even when he does go away, temporarily, Apocalypse doesn't. It's, yeah. I know, I like it enough. I'm going to choose to think that they're foreshadowing. And even if they aren't with the earlier example, as we mentioned, most of this episode is in the point of view of Dan Turpin. And when we see him the first time, when we see Superman the first time looking very menacing, we're still deep in Dan's POV. He may not be happy to see Superman. Even tied up, he may be like, I'm not really sure I want this guy to show up.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Dan does not seem to want Superman to help him solve cases, because he's getting a lot of flack from the press. Like, your job seems so easy because Superman does all the hard work for you, So he's got to protect his reputation in a sort of way and prove himself. Right. I mean, I don't think he actually has to, but he feels like he does.
He feels like he does, which is a fun kind of conversation about the gentler aspects of toxic masculinity, where, you've got Dan who just feels like undermined because Superman is there. And instead of going, no, Superman's not actually a cop, right? Like, he doesn't solve crimes. He's not a crime fighter. He will stop a thing that's dangerous to people, and sometimes that thing is a bank robbery or whatever, but he's not a crime fighter in the way that, Batman and Robin are. And so we can point at Dan and say, you're threatened for no good reason. Chill out.
Not even on the same game, guys. Not even playing the same game.
Yeah. And then they're fine at the end, so I think that's where we wind up. But that does bring me to my other, really weird, questionable choice, but that's a pretty small thing, is when Superman flies away, Dan salutes, like a military-style salute. And I'm just going to be honest, it kind of grosses me out. I don't understand it.
Well, yeah, because at that point, you're tying into the Superman equals America thing. And I think you and I, we have not talked explicitly about this, but I'm pretty sure you and I are on the same page when we're saying we don't like that.
It's complicated. And I can absolutely understand how we got to truth, justice, in the American way, considering that when that kind of stuff started becoming a real part of Superman's character, we were in the middle of World War II. So it's like, I get how we get there, but also it's probably time. And actually, the comic books have largely left this behind at this point. But they hadn't then. And I don't know. Knowing that Dan Turpin is an homage to Jack Kirby, and knowing that Jack Kirby was a proud member of the armed forces that went and fought in World War II, That's kind of like I'm having to go to some kind of metatextual or subtextual things, but it just really did not sit well with me. I don't understand it. It's gross.
It's a weird choice. It's just a weird choice, and I don't understand. It literally comes out of nowhere. So I think that's a weird one. But while we're talking about Dan Turpin, Joshua, I think we should talk about kind of what it means when you position the POV character as a police officer, even in Metropolis. And then I'll wrap us up on some lighter stuff because we still got to check in on Superman's power levels, which, by the way...
Let's do the dark thing, and then we'll do one more light thing on the way out. That makes total sense to me.
Listen, because the power levels this week, he actually has some really good, crazy stuff he does this week.
Some good stuff.
Good stuff. So, obviously, Joshua, there's a lot happening in the real world right now, and I know you and I on the show typically haven't really gone too much into it, because we want people to have fun and enjoy the show and enjoy the conversation around the show. But every now and then we have to stop and ask ourselves and check ourselves if we're doing cultural criticism in a way that is meaningful.
Yes.
I think that means we have to acknowledge both what's happening in our world right now and also what the conversation around pop culture at large looks like. And right now, in the month of June 2020, we're all, I think collectively, I'm not saying not just us, but I mean a lot of people out there, a lot of critics, a lot of filmmakers, a lot of television producers, everyone, Hollywood as a whole, I would even say, are rethinking how we have portrayed police in our media collectively. I don't think it's just any one thing. I think it's TV, I think it's movies, I think it's books. Like I think across the board.
No, because they're omnipresent. Because police are omnipresent both on our streets and in our media and have been for decades. And we need to reevaluate that. And I would say we especially need to reevaluate that in terms of superhero fiction. Because in the beginning, Superman was not a friend to the police. Batman was not a friend to the police. Most superheroes were not a friend to the police. But then, as we've mentioned, World War II happened. They started to become much more sort of institutional figures, both in the fiction and outside of the fiction. And with Batman, you also always kind of had Commissioner Gordon floating around as if nothing else, we had one good cop, kind of thing. But we need to reckon with this now. We need to reckon with the fact that there may be no such thing as one good cop. We need to reckon with the fact that I don't want my superheroes being de facto police at all. Just this week, in another conversation, I can't believe how often I'm having to have conversations about how Superman and Batman should just not outright kill people. But here I am having that conversation again this week, and it occurs to me that the main reason I don't want my superheroes to show up, fight people, and kill them is because then they're just cops. And I don't want that. I want them to be better than that. I want our cops to be better than that too, but I can't rewrite reality. I can rewrite superheroes.
The idea is that superheroes, I mean, even the ones that were really exploring the complexity of morality, like Batman, or the complexity of the law, but like you're still, at the end of the day, you want your superheroes to be symbols and ideas that that inspire us to be better, to help us grow to be better, right? That's a big part of, I think, at least from my perspective, that is a role that superheroes play in our pop culture and our culture at large now. Like, just it's important. And I'm not saying that you can't ever have a superhero kill someone. I'm saying if you're gonna do it, you better have a really good reason, and it better have consequences. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And consequences that are reckoned with in the fiction. So. Joshua, you and I are on the same page. I don't want Batman and Superman killing each other. The Man of Steel conversation, there was a point where I thought maybe this will go somewhere interesting, and they absolutely didn't do anything with it. So, I am on the same page. I think that was a bad. Now, in the retrospect, I'm like, nope, that was a bad call. They didn't do it. They didn't reckon with it in a way that was meaningful. Therefore, you had your hero of this universe, who's supposed to be your moral beacon, killing a dude and not reckoning with it. Really, I mean, that's not good. That's not good. That's bad. That's a bad use. If you want your superheroes to inspire people to kill people, I guess it's good. But if you want them to inspire us to be better people, then probably not. Then probably not. Sorry. Woo. Soapbox.
No.
More worked up than I thought I would get, to be honest. But
no, you're 100% right about Superman. And when we dial into this episode in particular, Dan Turpin is our viewpoint character, and he is very much in the maverick cop role where he goes against the book. I don't do it by the book. I get results, that kind of thing. He breaks the law to surveil Mannheim, before he turns in his badge and then does it again after he turns in his badge. And as far as the narrative is concerned, there is largely no difference between these two acts. And there should be. There should be a massive ethical delta between these two acts.
I mean, well, in both of them, but neither of them are good. I mean, one on the when he's doing it when he's got his badge, he's doing it representing the law. So he's breaking the rules as the law in order to get results, or at least he's trying to. So one, he's breaking the rule. He's breaking the law or breaking his own rules. So he's really betraying the thing he's supposed to be upholding. One, two, yes. And then that's the better one. The other one is he goes full vigilante and he's like, I'm taking matter into my own hands. I'm gonna get results. And you know what? By golly, guys. Not only is he our protagonist, he does it, but Superman says, good on you, Dan Turpin. That was great. Yes. Your heroic character says, yes, that's the attitude we need to have. Which, when you're looking at fiction, maybe there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance there where you say, yeah, I mean, this is the guy, he knew what the right thing was. We're on his side. So why not support that? Well, because in the real world, maverick cops probably not out to help you out as often, I would say. They're not necessarily there to protect or uphold the justice as much as they are trying to close a case or get a lead. Sorry, projecting again. I'm not saying there aren't cops who break laws who are all. I'm saying they're all malicious. I'm saying that it's more complicated than that, and it shouldn't be the norm for us to say this is a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's the picking apart of the presence of police in our pop culture that needs to be done. The fact that on this after-school serialized superhero cartoon, we not only ratify a maverick cop, but we let Superman, not just our point of view character being the maverick cop, supporting his choices, but then our hero of the whole show, who is a symbol of hope and optimism and goodness, also ratifies what are completely illegal and unethical policing choices. We got to pull this apart. Now, this show is 25 years old. I don't expect this show to be pulling it apart. But I'm going to tell you, anybody who is listening to this going forward, who is a writer or a creator themselves, you have got to reckon with this. And we cannot just fall into the same old trap of making cops our heroes, because then they get to do whatever the hell they want in the real world. And we've seen how that works out, and it is not good. And just for what it's worth, friends, this is three fingers pointing back at me, because I am currently writing my first ever superhero novel, and I had to put it on hold so I could pull apart and figure out what I was going to do about the one good cop that I had included without thinking about it hard enough. So that's the honest truth. I literally, in the run up to prepping for this episode, was spending 2 weeks thinking about how I was going to fix that problem in my own work. So I feel comfortable telling everybody in the world, from Hollywood executive down to fanfic author, you need to reckon with this. You need to be dealing with this. And the way that Tools of the Trade deals with it is wrong on every single level.
And I think, and the last thing I just want to say on this too, Joshua, is this is what we're talking about, like how sometimes it's like a trope, and that's the thing, it's a trope. This is an established trope, an archetype.
Absolutely.
It's old. Like it's Superman. Yeah, this does not fall strictly on Superman the animated series.
No, absolutely
this is a much
not.
larger
Yeah.
problem. But I think this is a good example of how the wrong message can be sent. And I also find it ironic that Superman frequently is giving Batman flack for doing like these types of things. Like this is Superman generally is calling out people for doing this, like some of his colleagues. So the fact that like he celebrates Dan Turpin doing it feels kind of inconsistent and kind of weird, which again makes me go back to this, the way that maybe, you know, even writers, even savvy writers, have a skewed perception of police officers and how we present them in the fiction. So yeah, just be thinking about it on this show, but also just for other things you watch. There's a lot of conversation happening around the topic. So,
and I think honestly, it's up to creators to do a lot of the work on this culturally. Okay, like people who write stories are not lawmakers, right? Laws are powerful, but honestly, story is the most powerful force in the universe, you guys. Like that's how we decide how the world works, is in our stories first. And so deciding that we're going to pick this apart and not just rubber stamp police in any genre, even one as closely tied to them as the superhero genre, is important, and it needs doing. And if you're not doing it, you are negligent in a cultural space right now. Now, how about some happier stuff? How about we talk about Superman being super powerful, huh?
So, yes, Joshua, so on that note, we got to check in with Superman's power levels. Now, we don't do this every episode, but whenever he does something particularly notable, I got to give it a shout out. So, this one's not really particularly super powerful. I just thought it was kind of cool. Was his tactic with the tank was flying it really, really, really high and dropping it until it breaks. Which, again...
Right. Those guys are dead, by the way. Like, just file that away.
Turbo dead.
Paste.
I don't care if they've got a helmet on. They are dead instantly on impact. But and then the second one is how he catches a falling electrical tower and just absorbs the electricity. He's, like, shocked by it for a minute, but you see, like, within moments, he's, like, just apparently absorbed that energy. But my real favorite this week, the one that I think is a home run, and this is like one of the reasons that Joshua and I created this segment, because we just sometimes Superman does stuff that's really crazy. So in this one, Superman catches a ball of energy. Like, it looks like lasers. So so I'm assuming these are actual, like, not lights, these are energy. He catches the ball of energy and throws it back at the cronies without flinching, Dragon Ball Z style. Like, there's not even a flinch. He doesn't even be like, no, he just catches it, throws it back at them like it was like, and he doesn't break a sweat.
I'm a huge fan of this. I think this is the natural outgrowth of punching laser blasts, which we saw with Brainiac. Obviously, if you can punch him, you can catch him
and throw him
right back. I love it. I love it. And it, not for nothing, it reminds me of the last time that we saw some Intergang stuff when they were having those microwave weapons that cause things to blow up. And he threw a tree at them after they shot it so that it blew up on them. It's just the more hands-on version of that, and I like it. And not for nothing, Caleb, we're going to need to see Superman level up a little bit power-wise before he is able to stand toe-to-toe with the Fourth World.
Oh, 100%. So this is really just, again, laying that very important groundwork within the universe.
Now, we're going to move on to our alternative media recommendations, listeners, and let me tell you, the theme of today's is irony. Because we have just told you to rethink your position on all cops in all media, and we stand by that, but we're going to give you a couple of examples of cops in media that we stand by, right or wrong. Caleb, tell me about yours first.
I mean, this is definitely in the wrong category. I just want to throw this out there. Like, I'm not going to say these characters, if these were real world people, were in any way doing anything the right thing, because they absolutely are not. In fact, it's kind of the joke. But a movie that I really love that, like, basically almost nobody saw, 2016's The Other Guys, directed by Shane Black, who's done Kiss Kiss and Bang, Iron Man 3, most famously or infamously, depending on where you land on that. And it is a buddy cop movie. It's just a dark comedy buddy cop movie starring Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, and they had just great chemistry. The jokes landed every time, and I mean, I'm a big fan of Ryan Gosling. I could watch him in anything, but he plays against type because he's like the punchline of the joke, so he's the one that's getting beat up all the time, which is usually he's the cool, calm, not strong, silent type. You know, not in this movie. He is him and Russell Crowe have a great pairing. I love this movie. It's so funny. I wish more people would see it. All that said, absolutely problematic. These guys are like private detectives who don't play by the rules. They break people's arms. I'm telling you, they beat people to a pulp. They break into parties they're not supposed to be at undercover unofficially. Like these are not good cops. These are bad cops. That said, problematic fave. It's probably one of my favorite buddy cop movies of all time. So I gotta throw it out there. I'll also just throw in, as an example of how to do police in fiction, I'm not saying it's 100% perfect, but you can look at a positive example of how we've done this. I think if I haven't recommended it on the show, I believe I have, but if I haven't, The Wire, currently streaming on HBO Max. Because here's the thing. Yes, your protagonists are cops, but they make it pretty clear from the jump, these guys are... These are not good guys. Like, these are cops who bend the rules and break the rules in order to, like, get cases closed so that they can, like, beef up their department. Like, the show is all about the politicking of different institutions collectively, not just the police department, but also, like, city politics, the education system, the news media and journalism, how all those things interact. But it starts with, in season 1, specifically on the police trying to close a case on a big, basically making a huge drug bust. And they are not good guys from the jump. Like, what your main character, or the closest thing you have to a main character, McNulty in that show, is an alcoholic, not a great guy from the get-go. And the best cops in that show, the best cops, who are also people of color, are also still like super game to break rules. Like if it gets the results they want. So that is an example of how you can watch media starring cops that's not like a bad it's not what I would call copaganda.
Yeah. Okay, we're making a sandwich here. So we had a bad example with the other guys that we enjoy nevertheless. We have a good example of cops in media with The Wire that I can say it's problematic on purpose. Like, it knows what it's doing. So if you want to see like an actual nuanced approach to this, both crime and the enforcement of law, there's The Wire. Now let's go back to another absolutely egregious and terrible example that I nonetheless love with all my heart. 1992's Hong Kong action masterpiece, Hard Boiled, starring Chow Yun-fat, directed by John Woo. It is maybe the only renegade cop movie I'm going to be able to put up with for the rest of my life. My jury is still personally out on whether I can appreciate Lethal Weapon because it's got the added Mel Gibson problem. I'll get back to you. But regardless, I will go to my grave, possibly buried with my copy of Hard Boiled. It's a bad example of policing on every level, but that is so not the point of the movie. We're going to go ahead and give it a pass because I say so. It's really just because I love it that much.
Listen, guys, it's John Woo, cop thrower. I can, at least with that, Joshua, even though it's all pro cop, I would also say it is like so over the top fantastical. It's easy enough for you to say, well, this is fantasy.
Yeah.
Oh man, guys, it's a great movie. Hard Boiled, it's a great fun time. Make yourself some popcorn, maybe take a couple of shots or something, and watch it because it's a fun watch. Yeah, your lead character is definitely a cop.
That about wraps it up for this animated discussion. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, come find us on Twitter. Caleb is at CMastersTalk and I am at Joshua Unruh, and the hashtag is Animated Discussion. Caleb, where else can people find you?
Well, Joshua, I'm the editor-in-chief and a contributor at the Cinematropolis, a website that specializes in in-depth film critique and analysis. We publish in-depth essays as well as a podcast, The Cinematic Schematic, over on thecinematropolis.com. Find us there.
Remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. Show your support by pledging at Patreon or by leaving a great review on Apple Podcasts to make it easier for more people to find us and join in the discussion.
And the links to the Patreon, Apple Podcasts, our recommendations, and Twitter are all easy to find in the show notes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this animated discussion. We'll be back next time to talk about the new Batman Adventures episode, Mean Seasons.
Until next time, look, up in the sky! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's an animated discussion!